In this chapter, we'll learn about intervals, duration, and period. Right? So we'll get started with interval first. Now, an interval is a time span defined by two date times. Right? I'll repeat it. An interval is a time span defined by two date times. Now, to understand this, we'll go back to the example that we used in the third module, right, where we learnt about date arithmetic, right? So we computed the length of a course using the course start date and course end date, right? So we'll use that to understand and get an overview of what an interval is, right? So let's go back to RStudio, right? We'll first create the course start and end date. Right, now this time we'll use as underscore date from LubriDate, right? In the third module we had used as dot date. Now we'll use as underscore date, which is another way to create a date object, right? So this I'll change to course end. Okay, so let us create this chair. Now we'll create an interval for the course duration, right? So interval course start course end, right? So remember, interval is a time span defined by two date times, so it should have two date times, right? And here we have two date times, the date on which the course starts and the date on which the course ends, right? So now you can see an interval object has been created, right? So it is represented by the start date and the end date, right, which are the two different date times. Okay, so what do you do with this, right? So how do you use interval in your data analysis, right? We should be able to use this for something. Now let us say you are planning a vacation, right, and you want to check if the vacation dates overlap with the course dates, right? So you have a course that is beginning on a particular day and ending on another day. So it starts on 12th April 2017 and it ends on 21st April 2017. Now you also have a vacation planned around this date, right? And you want to see if the vacation dates overlap with the course dates, right? So now what we'll do is we'll create another interval which will have the vacation start date and the vacation end date, and we'll use a function called interval overlaps, right? And using that we'll check if the two intervals overlap, right? Now if it overlaps, that is if that function returns the value true, then we know that these two intervals overlap, so the vacation is going to clash with the course. Otherwise we know that these two intervals do not overlap, so the vacation dates and the course dates are not clashing, right? So we have the course dates here. I'll also add the vacation start and end date, right? So let us say vacation starts on 19th April 2017, okay, and it will end on 25th April 2017, okay. So you have the vacation start and end dates and you have the course start and end dates, right? So we'll create two intervals now, okay. So the first one is course interval, and then we'll create a vacation interval as well, right? Here instead of course we'll have vacation. So the vacation start date and the vacation end date. Let me run this because we have not created those variables. I will create the course interval and the vacation interval, right? And then we'll see if the interval overlaps, right? So use this function int underscore overlaps, and then you give these two intervals, right? The course interval and the vacation interval. Now if they overlap, then you know that the vacation is going to clash with the course. If they do not, then you know that the vacation will not clash with the course. And the int underscore overlaps returns a logical value, right? Either true or false, right? So if the intervals overlap, it will return true, otherwise it will return false, right? So here it says true, which means the vacation is going to clash with the course, right? So that was one simple example. Of course, if you know the dates, you'll figure out whether it is clashing or not, whether the course dates and the vacation dates are going to clash or not. But if you want to store it using some logical value, then they can always create the intervals and see if they overlap. Alright, so now we'll go back to the case study and we'll try to answer how many invoices were settled within the due date. Now if you remember, we did this in the third module as well, right? So we used date arithmetic to count the number of invoices that were settled within the due date. But now here we'll take a different approach, a little bit of roundabout, so that we can use the interval and the interval overlaps function to arrive at the same result. Okay, so just a little bit of roundabout that we'll do. So let us take the data set that we have, which is transact, right? And then we will create a few new columns or variables, right? So which we'll use to calculate the number of invoices that were settled within due date. So first thing that we'll do is, since we are using the interval approach, we'll create an interval between the invoice date and the due date. Okay, so use interval function and create a interval between the invoice date and the due date. And then we'll create another interval between the due date and payment date, and then we'll see if the two intervals overlap, right? So we have the first interval, which is between invoice date and due date, and the second interval is from the due date to payment date. So if the payment has happened after the due date, then the intervals will not overlap. Only in those cases where the payment has happened before the due date, the intervals will overlap, right? But before that, we have to do a small modification, right? We will move the due date by 1 day, right? So we'll move it forward by 1 day using the days function. Okay, now I'll tell you why we are doing this in a few minutes. Right now I'm not going to explain this to you. I'll give you a few minutes to think and guess about it, but I'll explain it in a few minutes. Okay, in a couple of minutes I'll explain why we do this. Now let us create the second interval. Now when we are creating the second interval, that is between the due date and payment date, I will use this due next instead of the due date, right? So here the interval is between due next, where we have moved the due date forward by 1 day, and the payment date. So we're not making any changes to the payment date, it is the same, but only the due date has been moved forward by 1 day. Okay, and then finally we create a variable called overlaps, which will return the value true or false. Okay, so here use the int underscore overlaps and check if these two intervals overlap, right? The interval between invoice date and the due date, and the second interval between the due date and payment date, only with a slight modification to the due date, right? And then we'll select the following columns, which is invoice due date, payment date, and whether the intervals overlap, right? So let us look at the output. Okay, here it is, right? So wherever the payment has happened before the due date, the overlaps column has the value true, right? So here payment has happened on 15th January while it was due on 1st February. Similarly, here the payment has happened on 8th July while it was due on 2nd August, right? So in all these cases, in all these rows, you can see the value true. In all those cases where the payment has happened after the due date, you can see the value false. Right now here, because in these cases the intervals do not overlap because the payment date comes after the due date, right? I can use this and then count the number of invoices that were settled within due date. That would be those rows, that's the number of rows where the overlaps column has the value true, right? And we can do that here. We'll do that as count overlaps. Okay, so you can see true is 1589. So in the cases of 1589 invoices were paid within the due date, 877 invoices were paid after the due date. Right now I'm hoping that you are still thinking why we moved the due date, that is the due date for payment, forward by 1 day. Right now here we used the days function to move the due date forward by 1 day. Right now we can do another approach as well, right? So we can take another approach as well where we'll use int underscore shift, right? We'll use the int underscore shift function to shift the interval by 1 day, right? That's also possible. Let me go here, right? So here you can see the int underscore shift function where we use it to shift the interval, right? So you can move it by a day, you can move it by weeks, you can move it by years or month, right? We are using the same function again, the ones which we used to change or update the dates, which were days, weeks, years, right? We are going to use the same set of functions, but now they'll come inside the int underscore shift function. Okay, so I'll go back to RStudio and now let us try this approach. Okay, this is slightly different approach so that we can use the int underscore shift function. Okay, so let me copy this. We'll make a few modifications to this code itself, right? So instead of creating the interval after moving the due date forward by 1 day, what we'll do is we'll first create the two intervals, right? First interval is the one between invoice and the due date, invoice date and the due date. The second one is between the due date and the payment date. Right now we'll use int underscore shift, okay, to move this interval forward, right? So the second interval, which is between the due date and the payment date, will now shift it forward by 1 day. Okay, so we are creating a new column here. We are calling it due pay next, right? So the due pay interval, so interval between the due date and the payment date will be moved forward by 1 day, and this is how we'll do that. Int underscore shift, take the interval which you want to move, which is due underscore pay underscore interval, right? And then you specify by how many days you want to move it forward. So use the by argument and specify that you want to move it forward by 1 day, right? So first we create the two intervals. The first interval is between the invoice date and the due date. Then we create another interval between the due date and the payment date. Now we'll shift that interval forward by 1 day. In the previous case, here we moved the due date forward by 1 day and then we created the interval. Here we are creating the interval first and then we are shifting that interval itself, right? In the previous case, we shifted the date. Here we shift the interval itself forward by 1 day, and then we'll see if uh, these two intervals, that is the interval between the invoice date and the due date, and the interval that has been now moved forward, right? The interval between the due date and payment, which has been moved forward by 1 day, we'll see if these two overlap, right? Right, so let me run this code now. Right, again you can see that wherever the payment has been made within the due date, you can see the value true. Wherever the payment has been made after the due date, you can see the value false. Right, in all these cases the payment has been made after the due date, so you'll see the value false. Okay, so this is the second approach. Now I'll come back to the question why we moved this due date forward, right? Why did we shift the due date now in the first case we moved the due date forward by 1 day, and in the second case we shifted the interval itself forward by 1 day, right? Now if we did not do this, then both the intervals will share a common date, right? The due date is the common date between both the intervals, the first interval and the second interval. And if we do not move it forward, then both of them will share a common date, which is the due date, and they will always overlap, right? Let me take this code again. Right, so I'm taking this code again here, and we'll just remove this part where we have moved the due date forward by 1 day, right? Instead of that, we'll just use due here. So the first interval is between the due invoice date and the due date. The second interval is between the due date and payment date, right? So let us see what happens in this case. Right, so it says true in all the cases, right? Now it should return true only in those cases where the payment date comes before the due date, or at least on the due date, right? But here, even if the payment date comes after the due date, where there has been a delay in making the payment against invoice, it still returns true, right? And if we end up counting this, then we'll think that all the invoices were paid within the due date, right? All the invoices were settled within the due date, right? It says all the 2466 invoices were settled within the due date, which we know is wrong, right? Because a lot of those invoices were paid after the due date, right? So that is the problem. If you do not move the due date at least by a little margin, right? So that they do not, so that both the intervals do not share the common date, right? So the due date has to be moved forward a bit or moved backward a bit in the first interval, or moved forward a bit in the second interval. Some changes have to be made so that they don't share the common date, right? So now I hope you understand why we did those changes in the due date, right? Now let us take a look at the shift we did in case of the interval here, right? In the second method where we shifted the interval forward, right? So let us spend a little bit more time on that. I'll clean up the screen here for you. Right, so shift interval, and what we'll do is we will shift the course date or the course interval forward by 1 day, 3 weeks and 1 year, right? So we have the course interval, right? What we'll do is we will shift this forward by 1 day first, which is also something we did in the case study, right? So whenever you're doing that, use the by argument, and then you can use days, weeks, month, year, any of those functions, right? So here we shift the interval by 1 day. So from 12th April to 21st April, it has gone to 13th April to 22nd April. Now we can, instead of doing it by day, let us say we want to shift it by 3 weeks. Right? So due to some reason, we shift the course by 3 weeks. So now the date has changed again, right? So the starting date has become 3rd May and the course end date has become 12th May, right? It was 12th April and 21st April. Now it has become 3rd May and 12th May. Let us just look at one more example where we'll use the year, right? So instead of 3 weeks, we are moving it by 1 year. Right, so now you can see the year component has changed. It was 2017 here, it has become 2018, right? Here also same case, 21st April 2017 to 21st April 2018, right? So these are some examples of how you can use intervals, and see if the intervals overlap, you can also shift the intervals, right? So now we'll move on to the next topic in this module, which is within, right? Now let us assume that you have to attend a conference in April 2017, and now you want to see whether this conference will clash with the course, right? Now we can answer this using within, which will return true if a date falls within an interval, otherwise it will return false, right? So here you do not have two intervals, but you have one interval and a date, and you can use within to check if the given date falls within the interval, right? So we have the course interval already, right? We'll create the conference date. Let us say the conference date is on 15th April 2017, right? The conference date is 15 April 2017, and we have the course interval already with us, right? And now we'll see if the conference date falls within the course interval, right? So it returns true, which means this date falls within the interval that we have specified, so the conference will now clash with the course. Now again, we can use within to answer the same question which we answered using interval, right? That is, how many invoices were settled within the due date. And here it's even simpler, right? We'll start with the transact data set. Again, we'll create new columns, right? First we create a interval between the invoice date and the due date. Nice. Invoice and due date interval. And then we'll just check if the payment date falls within this interval, that is the interval between the invoice date and the due date, right? So let us select all these columns. We have invoice, due, payment, overlaps, right? So remember here, instead of creating two intervals, we just created one interval, which is the interval between the invoice date and the due date, and then we know the date of payment, right? And we just check whether the payment date falls within the due date and invoice date interval, right? So we have the interval, we have the date, we just check whether the date falls within the interval. If it does, we know that the payment has been made within the due date or on the due date. Otherwise, we know the payment has been made after due date. Right, so again you can see if the payment has been made before the due date, we have true. When it has been made after the due date, we have false. Right, let's also just get a count here of overlaps so that we know how many invoices were settled within the due date. So 1589 invoices were settled within the due date and 877 invoices were settled after the due date. Right, so good. So now we'll move on to the next topic in this module, which is duration. Duration is time span measured in seconds. The time span can be anything from second to years, but it will always be represented as seconds. Now to create a duration object, use the duration function, right? And we'll begin by creating a duration object where the time span is in seconds. And so let us call this as duration, right? Now in the first example, we create a duration object where the time span is in seconds. So first I specify the number of seconds and then we say unit is seconds, right? So it shows 50 years. Another way to write the same code is here you first specify the unit and then the value, right? It's the same. In the first case you specify the value followed by the unit. In the second case you first specify the unit and assign it a value. Now as you can see, the output is same in both the cases, right? Then slowly increase this time span, right? In this first case we have used 50 seconds. Now let us increase it to 60 and see what happens, right? Instead of 50 we'll use 60 seconds. Now although the time span is primarily measured in seconds, it also shows approximately 1 minute, right? You can see 60 seconds first and then in the bracket it also shows approximately 1 minute, right? As the length of the time span increases, that is the number becomes large, it is represented using larger units such as hours and days, right? As the time span increased from 50 seconds to 60 seconds, although it is showing 60 years there, it is also showing 1 minute, approximately 1 minute in the bracket, right? So as you increase it further, it will show it in hours and then days, right? So we'll try all of them, right? In the next few examples, as we go on increasing the number of seconds, you'll see larger units being used to represent the time span, right? So here instead of second, let us say we use the unit is equal to minute and then we have 50 minutes, right? So the primary representation is still in seconds, right? So although I have used the unit minute here, it shows 3000 seconds, right? So 50 minutes is 3000 seconds, but in the bracket it will show approximately 50 minutes, right? Now slowly we'll change this to 60 minutes like we did in the previous case where we went from 50 seconds to 60 seconds and it showed approximately 1 minute. Here also we'll do the same thing, right? We'll go from 50 minutes to 60 minutes, right? So now you can see it shows approximately 1 hour, right? So 3000 seconds and in the bracket it showed approximately 50 minutes. Once we increase that to 60, it shows 3600 seconds. Like I said, primary representation still is in seconds, but in the brackets it will go on using larger units. So from minutes it went to hours, right? Now let us use hour instead of minute, right? So from second we came to minute, now we'll use hour. So this is like 23 hours, shows 82,800 seconds. So 23 hours is equal to 82,800 seconds and in the bracket it shows approximately 23 hours. Now let us increase this from 23 hours, we go to 24 hours, right? And we'll see what unit it will use, the secondary unit. The primary unit is still going to be seconds, but the secondary one it will change, right? So now you can see it shows 86,400 seconds, right? 24 hours is 86,400 seconds and approximately 1 days, right? Now there are other helper functions that can be used to create duration objects as well, right? So for example, d seconds will show you 1 second, right? D minutes will show you 1 minute 60 seconds, right? Now again here also the primary representation still is in seconds, but you can also see 1 minute in the bracket, right? Let us now use duration second is equal to 59. So this will show you 59 seconds. The same thing can be created using d seconds by supplying the value 59, right? 59 seconds. So there are different ways to use the duration function, or you can use the d seconds or d minutes, right? So you also have this for minutes as well, right? You have duration. Let me clean up the screen on the right side. So you have duration, say the unit is minute, and we are looking at 50 minutes. The same thing can be created using d minutes 50, right? Similarly for hour, you have 36 hours here, and you can use d hours 36, right? So primary representation, like I said, still is in seconds, but you can also see the secondary representation happening in larger unit. Now let us also try with week, right? So we have tried all of them: second, minute, hour. Let us say we have 56 weeks, right? It shows the seconds and then it's showing years now, right? Approximately 1.07 years. The same can be done with d weeks, right? It's the same output. Now let us see how we can use the duration object in our data analysis, right? Let us go back to the slide we have here. So we have the course start date, course end date, and then we have the course interval. Right now from this we will try to get the course length in different units, right? So let us go here. Sorry, course length. So we have course interval, right? And now we'll start using the helper functions to get the course length in seconds, right? So you can see that 777,600 seconds, right? That is the course length in seconds. Now how about getting the course length in minutes, right? So instead of seconds, we want to know the course length in minutes. So it's about 12,960 minutes. That's the length of the course. Let us also use the other units that we have, right? Hours. What's the course length in hours? So that's about 216 hours. That is the course length. In terms of week, so that should be like 1.285714. So that's about 1.2 weeks. And if you want in years as well, then we have course interval divided by t years, right? That's about 0.02 years, right? So we looked at what duration is, right? How to create a duration object, how to get the time span in different units. Although the primary representation is always in seconds, you can also get the secondary representation in different units like minute, hour, and then up to year, right? And we also looked at the helper functions like d seconds, d minutes, d hours, d weeks, right? And finally we used all those helper functions to get the course length in different units from seconds up till year, right? So that brings us to the end of the duration topic. The next topic that we'll explore is period. A period is a time span defined in units such as year, month, and days, right? So duration was time span measured in seconds, but period is a time span defined in units such as years, months, and days, right? So we'll look at a few examples where we use period to represent time span using different units, right? Let us go to RStudio, right? So here we'll use period to get the time span in seconds, right? So here you can show it's nice. It nicely shows 5 seconds, right? Again, you can write it in a different way like we did for duration, right? You first specify the unit and then the value, right? Both of them are the same. The output is still the same. It's just a different way of writing. Now, what if you want to define the time span in minutes as well as seconds, right? So here we'll do this as period, right? Minute is equal to 3 and second is equal to 5, right? Now it shows the time span as 3 minutes 5 seconds. Now let us add hour to this as well, right? So our time span is 1 hour 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So use hour here, 1 hour 3 minutes and 5 seconds, right? So you can see that in the output 1H 3M and 5S, 1 hour 3 minutes and 5 seconds. You can add day to this as well, right? So far we have been playing with second, minute and hour. Now let us add day, which is 3 days, right? So the time span is 3 days 1 hour 3 minutes and 5 seconds, and we will represent it using period. So here you can see 3D 1H 3M 5S, right? 3 days 1 hour 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Now let us use this to get the course length again in different units, like how we did in the case of duration. We'll get course length in different units using the period function as well, right? So let us go here. It's the course length. So we'll use as dot period here. Okay, the first input is course interval and the unit is seconds, right? So you have the same thing, 777,600 seconds, right? We got similar value when we were using duration as well, right? Now let us change this to minutes, right? From seconds we'll represent this in minutes. So that is about 12,960 minutes and 0 seconds. We got a similar value when we tried this with duration, if you remember. Right, now let us use a hour. Right, this should be 216 hours 0 minute and 0 seconds. Right, so you can use period or duration to get the course length in different units. So the course length was an interval, and then along with that we use duration as well as period to get the length of the course in different units, right? So the output looks different compared to what we got when we were using duration. This looks different. Now there is one more function that I want to take you through, which is time length, right? Time length computes the exact length of a time span, right? That it could be duration, interval or period, right? It could be any of the three, duration, interval or period, and you can use time length to compute the exact length of a time span, right? So now here, since we have the course interval, let us try to compute the length of the course using time length as well, right? So we'll go to time length here, right? And we'll use the time underscore length function. Okay, let me clear up the console here, and then we have the first input, which is course interval, and then the unit in which we want the exact length of the time span. So here we want it in seconds, right? So again 777,600, right? So the output in all the three cases is the same, right? We first tried with duration, then with period, and now we are trying it with time underscore length. So here we'll change it to minutes, so that will be about 12,960, right? And then hours, which will be about 216 hours, right? So same output was there when we used duration, period, and time length, right? So you can use this to represent or define the time span using different units, right? So that brings us to the end of the module on intervals, duration, and period, right? So we have tried to use some very basic examples to introduce you to these concepts. Now we have added the link to the reference on the Lubridate package website, right? So you can go through there and you can get a better understanding by looking at the examples used there as well. Now if you have any confusion or any question regarding this module, you can always get in touch with our support team, or you can ask your questions in the discussion forum, right? So now we come to the end of this module. In the next module, we'll learn how to round and roll back dates.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos on our playlist, and subscribe to R Squared Academy channel to learn more. Happy learning!